educators here with the Wenatchee River Institute. We're a nonprofit with a mission to connect people, communities, and their natural world. With me tonight is our outreach manager, Randy Zerger, helping to make it possible for folks to interact with our event at home. And we also recording it for later so people can watch it on YouTube at their leisure. And you may have bought a beverage tonight from a wonderful volunteer, Paul Sozio, who it serves an announcement because he signed up for so many of these to come help us out. Wenatchee River Institute works towards our mission through youth and community education programs. So our youth programs deliver hands-on curriculum up and down Wenatchee Valley, and our Traveling Naturalist program now reaches as far as Brewster, giving experiential learning opportunities to 4th and 5th graders. Also, for the first time in 2 years, we've finally been able to go out with our inflatable, portable planetariums because kids can actually go inside of it. It's the first time in a long time that's been able to happen. Our community programs reach people through many of our Red Barn events like these ones and seasonal walks. We just finished our autumn amble walks in which we were on the front page of the Wenatchee World. So I had a reporter following me around and a photographer taking photos. And last week we were on the front page and we were in the midst of planning our snowshoe strolls for January and February here and at the Leavenworth hatchery. We also host and teach workshops and other classes. So coming up, there's still a few spots for a winter wreath class. So it's on Friday and Saturday. Saturday is full now, but we have 6 total spots left for the Friday class, and we're trying to have that cut off tomorrow. So if you're one of the many people that says they've been interested in it, now's the time to try to register for those classes. We've had a lot going on recently and have a lot more over the next couple of months. So if you want to keep connected, please check out our website or social media, or better yet, on your way out, sign up for e-newsletter because Randy's really great about sending out information every couple of weeks to keep people updated. Another aspect of WRI is our effort to connect to Indigenous peoples to their ancestral lands here. So I would like to take time to read out our land acknowledgement to you. This land acknowledgement was created alongside the Shimpish-Squashu people. We are spreading the message they wish to be spread to the public. The land Wenatchee River Institute sits on is the ancestral homelands of the Shimpish-Squashu, or Piscosa or Wenatchee people. The Shimpish-Squashu, meaning people in between, had villages positioned along the Wenatchee River and surrounding areas. Their ancestral homeland extends from the Cascade Range throughout what is known as the Wenatchee and Okanagan valleys. The culture and economy of the Shimpish-Squashu people centers on taking care of the lands. They fish, hunt, gather roots and berries, basket making materials, and medicines. The Shimpish-Squashu were named within the Yakima Treaty of 1855. Language to establish the Wenatchee Reservation was never followed through, even with the needed surveying completed. Many Shimpish-Squashu now live on the Culver Reservation, 150 miles northeast of Leavenworth. They were forced off their land here, and the U.S. government moved them to this reservation. The Shimpish-Squashu people are still alive today. They continue to practice their culture, harvest their traditional foods and medicines, and hold their ceremonies passed down from their ancestors. Most people won't see or notice them, but they continue to be on their land they are connected to. Their traditional language in Haimsheen, an interior Salish dialect, and we would like to welcome you all by saying hello in their language. Tilhush. We offer this land acknowledgement as this first step to amplifying Indigenous voices and recognizing the harm done to them as a people. We stand as an ally to recognize their connection to this land and their rights to practice their culture on these sacred lands. We encourage all to learn about the Indigenous peoples of the place you now call home. Wenatchee River Institute is committed to sharing this land acknowledgement and following up with other actions to educate and be respectful. And something going off that's really interesting and new to WRI. So at the end of October, we installed an art piece down kind of in front of Barton Beach along the trail. And this art piece was made by Swede Albert of Omak, and he is of Piscosa descent. And we got a grant from the Woods Family Music and Art Fund to commission him to design this art piece. And he got to kind of think of what would work best for him to connect to his ancestral homeland. And he actually came here and chose the spot himself. So we want to thank Swede for that. And we are so glad that we get to share that aspect with him. Before I introduce our speakers tonight, one last thing is I want to thank our sponsors. So our major sponsors, we have Gustav's Grill and Beer Garden, Ludwig's German Restaurants, the Obertel Inn, Posey Handput Goods, South Restaurants, Hotel Pension Anna, the Muchenhaus, Sleepy Lady Mountain Resort, North Central Washington Audubon Society, and Icicle Brewing, and other donors that are really impactful for us, the Cove Resort at Fish Lake, Kolchak Consignment, Riverfront Rock Gym, and Mountain Home Lodge. Without these sponsorships, we wouldn't be able to do things like this, and our donors are really important to us as well. Okay. Now to introduce our speakers. Amanda, sitting in front of me, you'll see on the camera in a minute, is the Education Outreach Coordinator for the Leavenworth-based nonprofit Waste Loop. Waste Loop, founded in 2019, seeks to inspire communities to transform their waste stream into sustainable resources. Waste Loop imagines and seeks to support a future where the concept of waste no longer exists and resources are valued throughout their life cycle. Amanda primarily works with local schools and the larger community to educate and inspire in the journey towards zero waste. Jana is the co-founder and executive director of Sustainable North Central Washington, previously Sustainable Wenatchee, the local nonprofit that promotes a culture of environmental stewardship and social sustainability in Chelan and Douglas counties. A Wenatchee area native, before founding Sustainable NCW in 2017, she worked as sustainability coordinator for Metro Parks Tacoma. Jana has a master's in environmental studies and a bachelor's in communication. So let's give them a round of applause saying hello for the night. Okay, we're gonna do some switching around real quick, but I think Amanda, you're up. It's right here, and I will switch over.
Joining us, those people joining us here today, as well as our Zoom audience. Jana and I will be talking about how to incorporate sustainability into your holiday season. And we're really hoping that this can be more of like a conversation and discussion. So if folks in the audience, both in person and on Zoom, have ideas or resources that they want to contribute, we welcome questions at any time during the presentation, not just at the end. So I want everyone to think about between Thanksgiving and New Year's, on average, Americans generate 25% greater solid waste than any other time of the year. So nationwide, that equals about 50 billion pounds of extra solid waste that is generated. And so our goal of the presentation is just to kind of give everyone an overview of the Towards Zero Waste movements, philosophy, and lifestyle, and then share some sustainability tips and tricks with kind of a holiday-oriented focus. Share some local resources that we have, as well as provide opportunities for other folks to contribute ideas and resources that they've come across. And then have question and answer kind of sprinkled throughout the presentation. So what is Towards Zero Waste? So everyone has probably heard of the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. Yes? Yeah, so pretty common knowledge. We've been hearing about this for a while. This is the inverted kind of like waste management pyramid, hierarchy pyramid that the EPA has published, with the most desirable actions kind of at the top that are going to lead to the greatest environmental, societal, and economic impact. And so that would be reducing both the natural resources that you're using, which then will lead to a reduction of the waste generated in the first place. And then those things that we do have to utilize in our day-to-day life, trying to reuse them as much as possible. So avoiding those single-use items, disposable options, and really trying to get a full life cycle of our products. Things that can't be reused anymore, trying to purchase goods that we know we can recycle responsibly and or compost. And then those things that we're not able to recycle or compost, ideally, there's at least some energy being recovered from them, whether that's through burning them, a biodigester. There's some benefit to their end of life versus this very bottom, smallest piece of the pyramid, least desirable option is essentially those objects are truly waste. In terms of they are sent to a waste disposal site, such as a landfill, and they sit there for hundreds, thousands of years. And yeah, they're no longer viewed as a resource. And so I like adding this fourth R, rethink, which is kind of encompassing all of these actions. And that is just to rethink about what the concept of waste even is. And instead of thinking of things that are no longer useful to you as waste, to think of it as a potential resource for someone else, maybe in your family group, in your business, school, larger community. And yeah, just kind of embody this towards zero waste philosophy. So Jana's gonna run through some tips on reducing our waste.
Great. Hi, everyone. So first thing is that, we often think of when we are giving gifts, you're giving stuff, right? But another way to think of that is experiences you could give. So when you think about the people in your life, your friends, your family, rather than what would they like to have, maybe more of what would they like to do. And so I'll just give some examples, and then I'd love to get some audience participation. For some of the things I thought of for kids, Slide Waters, that's a picture there. They do a cool discounted, they call it a stocking stuffer this time of year, and it's admission into the water slides in Spokane and also lunch there. So that's a fun one for kids. There's different memberships you can do, like the museum in Wenatchee has a family membership, or like Omi Gardens has, passes you can buy for admission. For active people, there's rafting gift certificates or golf passes for people who like to golf. Ski tickets, or for outdoorsy people that just maybe need some gear, you could get a gift card to a local ski shop or gear place. One of our favorites is Kolchak Consignment in Kashmir. For foodies or people who are into wine, I think they'd always love like a wine club membership if you're really generous, or just a gift card to go toward maybe a fancy dinner like Mana or something that they might not always get to do. That's kind of a treat. And then there's things that almost anyone would enjoy. Massages. I feel like that's everyone's like, yes, I'll take a gift card for that. Movie tickets are fun. Most people like to go to the movies at least once a year, a few times. And then another idea I had was like a Live Nation gift card, so you can go to a Gorge concert whenever you want to, or see something over in Seattle. So those are just some ideas I came up with like experiences. Has anyone else had one where they've given an experience as a gift or received one, or any other ideas locally that you would like to get maybe personally?
The one thing that I did this year was I gifted my,
You need this.
oh, yeah, sure.
Oh, can I just write something?
Whoops. Sorry, technical difficulties. My favorite gift I've given already this year is to my sister and soon to be brother-in-law, who just had a baby in June. and they've been really busy and trying to like stay on top of things. And I got them a family photo shoot. And so I
Aw.
paid one of my friends who's a photographer, and they're going to go out and get family photos for the first time ever.
Nice.
And she was like really excited about that gift, and it was pretty like easy for me to do, and it was fun. So that was my
That's a
fun.
great idea. I love that. Something that will really last a long time. And sorry, I bumped something and totally messed it up. Hopefully you're all still with us there at home on
Oh, yeah,
Zoom.
you're good.
Okay. We're good? All right. You guys worked so hard to get the tech up and running, and then I have butterfingers. Okay. And then the other idea is avoiding disposables. And I know if you're here, if you're listening to this talk, you're the type of person that brings, your own bag to the grocery store. But this can be where it's even a little like stepping up the next level, a little bit more difficult maybe. One example is we're having a fairly big gathering with friends, kind of a Christmas party, and we're not going to have enough silverware. And so rather than having like 20 people over and, bringing in just plastic silverware, we're going to probably ask a neighbor to borrow some or get into our camping stuff and get some of that out. So sometimes it is a little bit extra work, but avoiding disposables whenever possible. I think those kind of things come up a little bit more often in the holidays, where there's the easy option to just throw away that stuff, but trying to avoid that. Skipping disposable wrapping paper by using something creatively that you already have. If you have like a pretty tea towel, you can make that kind of as a part of the gift. And just trying to get kind of creative using natural adornments for gifts or like for ornaments. And Amanda brought some cool, I'll let her explain it in a little bit, but dehydrated citrus. And you can kind of use things like that to, instead of a plastic bow or something, to kind of decorate your gift giving and then reuse that as an ornament later. And then some other tips. Considering, I think a lot of times when we think of waste, we think of the packaging that it comes in, but thinking about the actual item itself and how long that's going to last and how long till that goes in the landfill, right? So when buying maybe decor, thinking about how much quality is here really to last a long time. Gifts, I think of like things that we get kids, how breakable is it? Is it just going to go to the landfill quick, or is it something that will actually last a while? Stocking stuffers, of course, are things that maybe are kind of cheap. So just thinking about that. Nobody's perfect. Sometimes kids' favorite thing is like the stupid cheap thing, right? So I always like to mention that nobody's perfect and we're always, just kind of on a journey, but those are things to consider. Opting for eco-friendly holiday cards. My favorite brand that I found is Paper Culture. A lot of people like to send a Christmas card or something that has family photos on it. And Paper Culture is a nice one where it's recycled paper, it's soy ink. They plant like a tree with every purchase or something like that. And I think they probably offset the shipping for carbon emissions and things like that. So doing a little research and trying to buy the best option that you can find. And those are comparable prices to the other ones. And then this is a common question that people ask, which is better, a real tree or an artificial tree? And the answer is it depends. But also the answer is don't stress about this kind of stuff too much. When you think about your environmental impact as a person, Christmas trees are not at the top of like major decisions to make. So, it is good to try to like do a little research maybe and think about it. But I don't want anyone to be stressed out by something like this. It will depend, if you're someone like this lady, she probably can't really go out and get her own tree in the national forest. And so maybe an artificial tree works better for her and her, situation or something like that. So there are a couple of options when thinking about getting an artificial tree. It's essentially what makes it depend on whether it's a better choice or not is how long you'll keep it. So if you can afford to buy a high quality one and you're going to keep it for 10 years, then maybe that is the better choice. For real trees, there's lots of different options. Like I said, there's the option of getting the permit and going out and cutting your own. And I think that people sometimes might think it's kind of counterintuitive. You might think that's a bad thing to like go cut a tree. But actually for the size of Christmas trees, you're kind of helping to improve forest health by cutting maybe those smaller trees that when a wildfire comes through are gonna, burn up anyways. So it's not a bad thing to go get your own Christmas tree. If you can, maybe carpool with somebody else, take one truck and get a couple trees or something like that. But of course, most of us probably go to a lot and pick one out there. And that comes from a tree farm where they're going to replant one right away. Or you can go to a tree farm yourself. Like I know the Iniat has one, and they'll replant one right away. So there are some things to think about, but like I said, none of it's make or break. The other idea that Amanda and I were talking about was this idea of buying a potted tree and then planting it later. And there, I talked to our board president, who's a landscape designer and horticulturalist, and she said that her family did that growing up. But there are some things to consider. Preferably you get one that's native, but also if you bring a potted tree inside, it'll break its dormancy, I guess. It'll be warm and it will think, oh, it's time to grow. And so there's a lot of things to think about. If you want to buy one that's locally sourced, like from Derby Canyon Natives, they close in October. You'd have to plan early, get your tree, and then you'd have to have a hole dug because the ground is frozen, right? So there's a lot of pre-planning. She said you can plant a tree in the middle of winter, it just won't grow, or you could keep it until spring. There's a lot of things, to consider there, and probably isn't really worth it, like I said. So don't stress about the trees. And then thinking about beyond just waste, but what you can do during the holidays and throughout the year to reduce your carbon footprint. So one of the main things you can do is just try to eat more plant-based options. Your diet has a big impact on your carbon footprint. And so, of course, in the holidays, we have these big meals often centered around a turkey or a ham. And I guess there's a turkey shortage this year, so maybe people will have to get used to being more plant-based. But kind of just thinking about the options that you have, especially when you're cooking for a big group of people. But that's something you can do all year long. This is a really great resource. It's up on our website at sustainablencw.org in the food resource page. And it was put together by a local Rotary group, and it's pretty new. It was done last month, so it should be all up to date. And it has all sorts of resources on where to find plant-based food. So that's a great resource that we've got available to us now. Of course, shopping local for gifts and food, it's a little bit more tough to shop local for food in the winter time, but trying to do that when we can. And when shopping online, I know we all do it here and there probably, try to combine orders. If you're shopping from a big online retailer, I won't name any names, not opting for any 2-day shipping, opt for the slower shipping if you can, combine orders so that you get one box in one truck and that kind of thing. And then carbon offsets are something to consider if you're fortunate enough to be able to travel out of state and fly to see family, or maybe you're paying for a ticket to have family members come back. It's worth considering buying a carbon offset for that flight. It's often not too expensive. I kind of did a little research, and even from like Seattle to Florida can be only like $5 or $10 extra to cover your carbon from that flight. But you do want to be considerate and think about what organization that you're essentially donating to someone else to, kind of offset that carbon. And there's a lot of them out there, and not all of them are totally maybe legitimate or equal, at least. One that I did some research on at one point, I wanted to offset our flights, and also we have a propane tank that we use for kind of, we try not to use it too much, but for a fireplace. Native Energy was one that I did a little research on, and it seems to be pretty legitimate. But the other idea is it doesn't have to be an official carbon offset that you buy. You can just donate to a local organization that is working to improve climate change. One example is C6 Forest to Farm was here just a couple of weeks ago with their biochar. They're a great one to send, a donation of $10 their way or more if you can, and then consider that flight offset. I think is totally fine to do. Reusing. So obviously shopping used is always better than shopping new. And you can do that with things like an ugly Christmas sweater. There's a lot of things, that kids will wear maybe only once, like a pretty Christmas dress for a young girl, or the Christmas PJs that kids wear. There's a lot of decor and things like that that's easy to find used, and it might be higher quality that you can find nowadays in stores anyway. I love shopping at consignment shops like Little Pockets and Cashmere, where they have great stuff at really reasonable prices. Reusing gift bags. And so this is a little bit different than, reducing might be something that you already have, but I would say reusing is searching out something that you're going to buy, but then you're going to use it over and over again. And so an example is like buying these cloth gift bags that you can reuse every year. And one tip I have is that I like to buy, if I can't find something local and I'm going to buy it online, I like the website Etsy, which is mostly handmade things. But there, when you're shopping on there, you can apply a filter to only have it be something that's shipped from within the state. And so you can kind of see just more local-ish shops. So this is an example of these from Bainbridge Islands. At least it's kind of local and not coming from too far away. Invest in some reusable wrapping supplies using rechargeable batteries. There's a lot of kids' toys or decor or whatever that might take batteries. And then, of course, regifting, the classic, I don't really want this, so I'm going to give it to someone else. I think for me, it's those people love to give the really soft socks that are like made out of polyester. They're plastic and your feet sweat in them so much. So I'll pass those on when I get those type of socks, or regift. It's another way of saying donating to a good thrift shop that's local. Okay, now I'm going to hand it back to Amanda to continue.
Before moving on to recycling, just wanted to also kind of include repurposing and repair as some of the other R's in our Towards Zero Waste philosophy. And just wanted to kind of highlight a few local events that Waste Loop has been organizing in the community. And so every second Monday from this past week through April, we'll be meeting at Icicle Brewing and providing supplies for folks to bring clothing or other textiles that need mending. Textile waste is a huge contributor to the landfill. So this monthly event is just trying to spread awareness to that, as well as provide those resources to repair the clothing that we already have. Along similar veins, we're partnering with Kolchak Consignment in Kashmir for a gear repair cafe, which will be a little bit broader in scope, not just textiles, but tents or skis or any sort of outdoor gear that needs some TLC and can just be repaired instead of, disposing of it and buying something new. And then the other thing that we've been doing is collecting used feed bags from community members, these plastic 50, 60-pound food bags that animal feed comes in are not recyclable. And so we've been collecting them to divert from the landfill and turning them into reusable grocery totes. So we actually have some over there kind of as examples, or if anyone wants to purchase one as a fundraiser for Waste Loop, you're welcome to. But we're also looking for volunteers to help with those efforts. So on to recycling, kind of that middle of that pyramid. So again, we want to try and reduce and reuse before we get to recycling. But of course, recycling is a much better option than sending something to the landfill if it can be recycled. And we get a lot of questions about what actually can be recycled here in the Wenatchee Valley, and it changes. So a few years back, Waste Management stopped collecting glass, for example. And so this kind of poster graphic right here is something that we created for our events to try and make it as clear as possible of what is actually accepted currently in Leavenworth, and as well as the Greater Valley. And so you can see that any sort of mixed paper, including cardboard, can be recycled. What can't be recycled is any paper with a liner. So Tetra Pak, milk cartons, if it has that waxy or plasticky liner, unfortunately cannot be recycled. Question, yeah.
Are the envelopes that have the clear plastic little see-through where you can go say it's from the bank, you can do you want those to recyclable if they have that little window?
They are, yeah. When paper gets recycled, they have the technology to pull those little pieces of plastic out. So yeah, good question. But then with that, an envelope is large enough, but if anything is smaller than your palm, it cannot be recycled via curbside. The reason for that is the sorting machinery, which you can kind of see here. All of our recycling goes to a sorting facility in Spokane, and anything smaller than the palm will just get jammed in their conveyor system. So like shredded paper, fortunately, don't put that in your curbside bin. So that's paper. Metal cans. Aluminum is so great to recycle. It saves like 95% of the energy versus producing a new aluminum can. They should just be clean and empty of any liquids or foods. And then plastic is the trickiest one. And right now, kind of the standard that Waste Management has communicated is that plastic can be recycled if it is bottle shaped. So you asked that question earlier, Connie, about the numbers. Just forget about that. They're going by shape now. So a bottle, jar, or jug, essentially, if you can screw on the lid, then you want to screw off the lid, throw the lid in the trash, and then recycle that vessel. So like water bottles, milk cartons, or milk jugs, plastic jars like peanut butter jars, as long as they're clean and dry, they can be recycled.
The containers that spinach and greens come in that are plastics at the store, those can't be recycled.
No, so there's a question about clamshell containers, like spinach containers, unfortunately, cannot be recycled. Yogurt tubs also cannot be recycled. And that is just due to who is buying the plastics. We got to visit the Smart Center in May, which is really cool. And we found out that, for example, those yogurt tubs, there's only one buyer in all of Washington. And they're just saturated by folks in Seattle, which is the closest city to them. So they just are at capacity. They can't accept from Spokane. So until we get more local markets, this is what it is. But I would say like it does change. So trying to, as best as you can, like keep informed. And if you're unsure, ask questions and reach out. So one local option for Leavenworth city residents is bringing your mixed recycling, if you don't have a curbside container, to the Leavenworth Recycling Center. Unfortunately, the mixed recycling, the cardboard and yard waste is just for folks in the city of Leavenworth, which is like a pretty small geographic zone. However, the recycling center is a location for glass recycling for anyone in the valley. And the recycling center is located across from the community cupboard. Address is right there, and it's open on Wednesdays and Saturdays right now. So speaking of glass recycling at the recycling center, so Waste Management stopped accepting glass curbside 3 to 4 years ago, and Waste Loop has kind of stepped in to try and fill that need in the community for glass recycling. So since July of 2020, about 2 years now, we've diverted over 150,000 pounds of glass out of the landfill. And right now it's collected at the recycling center and it's hauled over to Seattle, where it gets recycled by a company called Strategic Materials. And they're the only glass recycler in Washington right now. So right now this is the trailer and it's largely utilized by residents, a few businesses, but we're hoping that in the future we'll be able to have a bicycle powered business collection service that local businesses, especially in the downtown Leavenworth area, can subscribe to a service, and their glass bottles from bar or restaurant or hotel, wherever, are picked up on a weekly basis and are able to be hauled and be recycled. So stay tuned for that. So we're hoping that we'll be able to kind of get this up and running, at least as a pilot project this spring. It's kind of hard with the snow to start something like this. Other recycling. So from time to time, we do like product specific drives at the recycling center. And from now through January, Waste Loop will be accepting old string lights. So if you're pulling out your string lights to decorate your tree or your home and you're like, oh, this is broken or not working for whatever reason, feel free to bring them by the recycling center. Again, Wednesdays and Saturdays. And we will be bringing hopefully a whole bunch to Wenatchee Valley Salvage and Recycling, which is a local metal recycler. And they're located over in East Wenatchee. And yeah.
Do you bring your string lights throughout the year to them, like just kind of individual
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great question. It was, if you discover you have string lights throughout the year, you can't make it up during these months, can you bring them as an individual to this location? And the answer is yes. They accept all types of metal. And they'll even pay you a small amount for the metal. I think last year we had like 50 pounds of string lights and we got like $5. So a little bonus. But yeah, they're a great local resource. And we have other great local recycling resources that are not that mixed recycle waste management. But it does take a little bit of digging sometimes. But Jana's going to kind of go through a tool that has been developed, the Waste Wizard.
Okay, so this is a tool that is customized for Chelan and Douglas counties. And so we're just going to go through with my assistant here some examples. So this is the Waste Wizard. It's at sustainablecw.org. Under resources, you can see it's kind of towards the bottom, Waste Wizard. And it's essentially a search tool where you can search whatever you're looking for to recycle. So I'm going to offer just some kind of holiday themed examples. So the first one is if you're having maybe friends over for some kind of party and you are wondering, are wine corks like the natural wine cork? So you could just type in cork or wine cork. And then you see, as you start to type, it starts to kind of guess what you're looking for. And then once that's clicked on, it will offer, so right away it says, get creative. You can look for ideas on Pinterest. And then it will show you, yeah, there you go. And then it will be in order of like best options. So for this, it's not recyclable or anything. So your best option, it will give a bunch of ideas for reusing, give it to someone else. And then as you move further down, it will show other options. It just belongs in the garbage. Another example, as you're getting out maybe decor or getting ready and unwrapping kids' toys, would be batteries. So if you want to just search batteries, and then you can see a lot of them come up, but we're looking for alkaline batteries, which are that kind of typical. And so there'll be maybe some information, kind of a little bit of history there about, what kind of batteries, what they're made out of, and that they're not accepted for recycling in terms of like waste management. But here's some best option places where you can bring them locally. And let's see, how about if anyone's one of those kind of crazy people that likes to fry your turkey and you have a bunch of cooking oil left over. So if you want to search for cooking oil, so that's something that you can take to, well, there'll be some tips here, like don't pour it down your drain, other ways of disposing it. But then there's a note that Chelan County residents can take it to be recycled to your the household hazardous waste facility. So if you scroll down a little bit there, you'll see all of the information that you need for that facility there for recycling cooking oil. How about you decided to get a new TV on Black Friday, so you have a bunch of styrofoam. Not that I'm suggesting this, but this is what you would do if you need to get rid of your styrofoam. So styrofoam is a number 6, and we do say don't try to pay attention to the numbers, like with waste management, that they're more about shape. Styrofoam's the exception, where if you see a number 6 on something, you can take it to Dolco in Wenatchee. So it's a styrofoam manufacturing facility that accepts recycling of any kind of number 6. So often it will be, big block styrofoam, like if you bought a package or something, but it also could be those kind of takeout clamshell, like if you got takeout somewhere and they put it in styrofoam. Other weird things like bread clips for your bread bag are often made out of a number 6, or sometimes like CD cases. Nobody really listens to CDs anymore, but if you have some to get rid of, you can recycle them with Dolco, and if they're number 6 plastic. And all the information is there. So on the Waste Wizard, like if you clicked on Dolco, it would take you to another page with all of their hours and directions and all of that. Okay, we'll do a couple more. How about you decided not to make your own dinner rolls and you're going to buy them in a big bag from Costco, so plastic bag. Have to keep, there you go. bag. Huh, I guess keep typing to. There it is. So this will offer information about drop off for recycling or for grocery stores. So many of you probably have recycled your grocery store plastic, your grocery bag, but they accept accept all kinds of plastic wrap and plastic film. So even like a bread bag or a bag that you might, if you buy a bunch of rolls or something like that, they can all be shoved together and recycled at a grocery store drop off at the entryway there. And then the little reminders like, please do not put it in your curbside bin because that will junk up the sorting facility at the sorting facility. How about wrapping paper? People ask that quite a bit. Can you recycle wrapping paper? And this will tell you that yes, it's recyclable if it doesn't have things like glitter or if it's not really plasticky or foil. It's got to be pretty much plain paper to be recycled. But better yet, use a scarf like we talked about earlier. How about a whipped cream can? So then you'll see aerosol cans. So sometimes if you search for what you're looking for, it will try to correct you. So we've put a bunch of like synonyms, and I actually added whipped cream can in today. So this is something that we can edit. So you can put, if you're looking for something and you don't find it, you can send us a little note and we can edit it. Hopefully people would search for aerosol cans, but you know, it's a whipped cream can. So it won't maybe match the picture, but it's the same thing. And this will tell you that that's actually not recyclable curbside, that you just got to toss it. Okay, let's do one more. Aluminum pie pan. Pie plate, yeah. So this will tell you can't put it in your curbside bin, but you can take it to, like, this is the metal recycler that Amanda mentioned earlier. So I have a little, under my sink, a little collection of little metal items. Someday I'm going to drive up to the airport to take. Bless my husband's heart, he deals with my collection of all that stuff. Okay, thank you, Chelsea, for that assisting. Does anyone have any other things you'd like to search on the Waste Wizard? Any questions about that? Okay, I did bring some bookmarks, so you can take those home as a reminder. It's got the QR code on there. All right, now we're going to talk about composting.
So composting is, I kind of encompass it with recycling because it is the recycling of organic matter. And there's a lot of different ways to compost. So you can do anything from like an outdoor system, like 3-bay system, to composting with worms, to bokashi, which is like more of a fermentation, pre-compost, to a tumbler. There's a lot of different options to compost at home. Kind of the basics are that you don't want to compost any meat or dairy or like processed foods at home because it can attract animals, and your home system probably won't be able to heat up to temperatures high enough to kill those bacteria that live in those materials. So yard debris, vegetable, fruit, coffee grounds are great. Tea and eggshells are kind of the only animal-based food that I would recommend putting in a home compost. And you essentially just want to layer it so that you're mixing brown carbon-rich materials like wood chips, dry leaves, hay, straw, with your nitrogen-rich greener materials like food scraps or fresh plant clippings. Industrial composting, on the other hand, is designed to be able to accept those other food materials, because through that process, the bacteria that are involved are able to heat up that pile to temperatures that will kill those pathogens. And so meat, dairy, bones, any sort of grains or processed food, as well as, depending on the facility, certain compostable packaging items. Like, I'm sure everyone has seen those compostable to-go containers or utensils, and that is really dependent on the facility that they're ending up in. So that's important to do a little bit of research into and ask questions. At the end of the day, what compost is or your organic material, water, which provides a habitat for the microbes, air, which provides oxygen for them, the microbes themselves, the bacteria and fungi, and time. Materials will decompose outside naturally, but what we're doing in either a backyard or an industrial scenario is kind of speeding up that process by providing the aeration, the water, and the food sources for those microbes to do their thing and give us nutrient-rich compost. And so here in the Wenatchee Valley, we do have an industrial composting option. Like if you're someone who maybe lives in an apartment, your spouse or roommates think worms are gross and they don't want you to have a worm bin, or you're concerned about animals, you can bring your yard waste and food scraps up to Winton, which opened up in June. They're about a mile west of Coles Corner, right along Highway 2 at the old Winton sawmill site. And they use a aerated static pile. So that row is about 100 feet long or so and about 15 feet tall. It's a lot of material. And that material is a mix of yard waste and food waste. And it's covered with essentially a big piece of Gore-Tex. There's a lot more technology involved. It can be controlled remotely and has temperature and respiration sensors in there. But essentially after about 30 days, it is good to go. It has been over 131 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 3 days, which kills all those pathogens. And it emerges as compost that still needs to mature a bit and then get sifted out, which is this photo over here. But then it does emerge about 3 months later as a nutrient-rich amendment for farms, orchards, your own garden. You can go purchase it up there as well if you want the finished product. So up until this month, they've been primarily you could drop off like a pickup load of yard debris, for example. But starting November 1st, which kind of coincided with the bears starting their hibernation, they've begun picking up food waste from several area businesses and restaurants, as well as a community compost program. So this is open to community members. There'll be a drop-off site at the Leavenworth Recycling Center and one up at Winton. So be a bit of a drive for folks in Wenatchee at the moment. But if you're going up to ski at Stevens, you can swing by Winton on your way, drop your kitchen scraps off. It's $5 a month for a household to collect those kitchen scraps and drop them at one of these 2 locations. Hopefully there'll be more in the future. And if you're interested, just head over to their website and sign up. But it's a pretty exciting opportunity. Sean, yeah. Leavenworth Recycling Center and at Winton. We are working on figuring out zoning to hopefully be able to expand to locations at first in Leavenworth and Plain, but then hopefully down Valley, Peshastin, Kashmir, Wenatchee over time. Yeah. Yeah.
Other than going to Vincent, is there other place where you can buy the compost?
Currently, so the question was, can you purchase the compost outside of Winton? And currently, no. You have to go up on to them and pick it up. They do, yeah, like larger scale deliveries. Yes. Well, okay. Well, Christmas tree composting. So this is something that we get quite a few questions about each year, what to do with your old Christmas tree. And so it kind of depends where you live. So if you are within the apple maggot quarantine, you cannot bring your Christmas tree out of that area. And so there's kind of two options. One, you can drive it up to Winton and they'll take your tree, just kind of treat it as a load of yard waste. And then every year the brush drop-off yard, which is like on the corner of East Leavenworth and Icicle, they usually close for the season, but often they're open for like 1 or 2 dates in early January. I know last year the big snowstorm prevented that from happening, but I tried calling the city today, didn't get a hold of anyone to see if they have the date set yet, but we'll be announcing that. But just keep that on your brain. You can bring it there, hopefully. And then if you are outside the apple maggot quarantine, so basically kind of like outside of Leavenworth, down valley, you can bring it to Stemilt Organic Recycling. Okay, yes. Or if you do have the green toter yard waste through Waste Management, then you can piece it into smaller chunks and they will bring it to Stemilt. And I guess the same, if you're in Leavenworth city limits, you can bring it to the recycling center as part of the yard waste. But you do have to, again, chop it into smaller pieces. You can't just show up with a 10-foot Christmas tree and try and throw it in the recycling center. Okay, so questions? Yeah.
So you mentioned the plastic.
Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned how plastic recycling currently, it's no longer really number, it's just the shape. So if something's like I don't know what other types there are, I usually do type 1 and 2. So if it's not one of those and it's bottle shaped, we could recycle that one now? Ish, kind of? Okay.
It's an interesting question, and there aren't a lot of bottle shaped things that are not number 1 or 2. And I think, and Jenny, you can jump in here too, but how I understand it with Waste Management is that they're just trying to have a clearer message to the general public of like shape is easier for most people to be able to quickly sort and sort accurately versus trying to look at what number it is, as well as the manufacturers are looking for those shaped products. They're not looking for numbers 1 or 2 that are not the bottle shapes. So it's kind of a mix of like public messaging and current manufacturer demands. No.
I would say that that's, yeah. They pretty much 1 and 2 are what you want. Yeah, I think if it's a number 3, yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Recently, I have seen milk now coming in plastic jugs at Dan's, and what is better, a plastic jug of milk or a carton of milk, as far as what's the better option, environmentally speaking?
That's a tough one too. Instead of what is better, I like which is worse, right? Like neither are great.
So the question was, what's the better option? A waxier plastic lines paper carton of milk that you cannot recycle, or a plastic jug of milk that you can recycle?
I'd say a plastic jug is probably better because you can recycle it. Sometimes it gets a little tricky because when you're thinking about, as a consumer, the waste that you create, we focus on just what we do with it rather than the whole process of how it got to us. There's a lot of ways that happens in that whole life cycle before you ever get your hands on it. And so it doesn't always depend on what you do with it. Sometimes the thing that actually has less waste might be something that you can't recycle. Like Tetra Paks are these products that have multiple, like soup or soy milk or they're like shelf stable. You know what I'm talking about? It's hard. I should have brought one with me. It's hard to describe. Yeah, a little knob on the top, and it doesn't have to be refrigerated necessarily. So those can't be recyclable, but they're very efficient. You can pack in a ton of them in a truck. So where you could maybe get something in a nice, beautiful glass jar, that you can recycle theoretically, there's going to be a lot of, you can't fit as many in the truck. And so that truck has to use more gas, or, those things to consider, or the things that it took to actually make the packaging or whatever. So there's kind of more to consider than just the end user, and what you're going to do with it.
Right, or where it's originating. Like if you're able to purchase one of the products from a local farm versus purchasing from multiple states away,
Yeah.
then yeah.
The other thing I like to remind people is we often really focus on the packaging of something, but thinking about what you're actually buying also, like the actual milk. What's the most eco-friendly option in terms of, is it organic or is it a plant-based milk, or, those things too, not just thinking about the packaging, but what am I actually buying? Like people are really upset about yogurt tubs because we're all like, we were recycling yogurt tubs for so long and now we can't do that. But also thinking, what does yogurt mean for the environment? And that kind of question too, a little bit of a step back in terms of our consumer habits. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we have a question online. Shredded paper is not recyclable by waste management. However, I believe it is accepted at Douglas County's various mixed paper big bins. For example, there is one in Baker Flats. If that's correct, should you just dump the shredded paper directly into the big bin, or should you bag it in a bigger paper bag?
I would say that's a good question for Douglas County. I don't know what their process is.
I can speak to, I visited Michelson Packaging, which is in Wenatchee, and they have a similar setup where they do accept paper of all sizes. And I asked them, and they don't mind if you just throw shredded paper directly in the mixed paper vessel, because essentially all the paper becomes shredded after it goes from that collection site to their processing.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense. And shredded paper is great for compost. If you've got worms or are composting at home, that's a very easy one to add to your compost.
Hello, internet. What is the current status of the possibility of restaurants in town being able to compost their waste?
Yeah, so there are, I believe, 2 restaurants that are currently composting their back of house food waste, Munchin House and Yodelin.
No,
Yodelin's not yet. They're not yet. Okay, Munchin House is
in theory,
the one. And hopefully Yodelin will be soon.
And does that get picked up outside by the waste management, or how does that get brought to?
It gets picked up by Winton. Yeah, so the Winton dumpsters are behind Munchin House in the alley right now. They'll get picked up once a week and brought up there, turned into compost. So if there's any businesses listening at home, get in touch with Winton if you would like organic recycling.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the props and ornaments that you brought?
Sure.
I forgot to mention these. So these are, when I was talking about buying something, you might already have it, or buying something with the intention of reusing it. So these are play silks. So they're fun just for kids to use creatively, as a cape or as dress up or whatever. But I bought them with the intention also of using them to wrap kids' gifts. So they are a little bit sheer. So this one, like I did 2 of them, but this is not fancy at all. This is just laying out the box, tying the ends and doing it again. And I'm sure someone who took the time to make it look nice could make it look a lot nicer, but it looks not so bad. And yeah, and then you can just reuse that again and again. The only thing with these is then there's the etiquette of, if you give someone this gift and they love the play silks, you might have to let them keep that. I think in Japan with furoshiki, it's you give it back. Like you don't keep the wrapping, but you probably should just be ready to part with it if they're going to want to keep it. So these are really obnoxious colors, but these are examples that I have of play silks. But there's all kinds of obviously fabric that you can use for something like that.
Yeah, and then this one over here, I just used packing paper. Like this had come with something I bought online, and so I saved it. Use this to wrap this gift. And then I actually got these grapefruit and limes out of the free bin at Sage. They were kind of going bad. And so I just sliced them up and dehydrated them, and I think they make like really nice little adornments. I made this kind of ribbon out of fabric scraps. You can just kind of twist them two different colors to get the contrast. And then I got this cedar from a tree outside.
Foraging.
Yes. So.
I think tonight is the first time I've ever used the word adornment.
But I do have a bunch of these dried slices. If anyone would like to grab some for your own adornment needs, feel free.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have also made like mobiles with them that I have in my windows.
Nice. Nice. Yeah.
Other questions?
Do you know if Winton is working on like a surplus of compost that they are looking for customers, or are they looking for more composting material? And follow-up would be, if they are looking for more customers, is there any sort of like local buyback incentive or buyback local discount thing?
Yes, so I think they are, trying to build their business. They're still pretty new, so are definitely looking for more customers to subscribe, to collect. And then I believe that customers do get a discount off of the finished product. Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone online.
Yeah.